Derek, you've had an opportunity now in a couple of days to give different looks to that Dylan and Alex. What have you liked with Lucas on yesterday and David today?
A little bit different. Obviously, Lucas probably fits those two a little bit more on entries and transition. Obviously, what DP can do is down low play. And you saw in some of their reps in extended ozone time. David keeps plays alive. He makes plays in tight areas, and it was good today. So it was good look. And then obviously this last session here, really liked Fabs today, Lucas, JT. They had some pop too, made a ton of plays. So again, work in progress, not married to anything. Tomorrow probably a little more special teams oriented, where we may keep the lines today simply because they're already there, and tomorrow's gonna be all about special teams.
How much does who you ultimately deem best to play with Dylan and Alex affect like then how the makeup of the other lines, like for what you have in mind?
Yeah, we're so far away from that. Again, we do have a little more depth this year. I think there's different looks throughout. We're not even married to Alex and Dylan yet, even though we've had a couple of days with them. So I think there'll be a lot of looks. We just had a look with Fisher today with Kopp and Rass. It looked good. Kim Costin has shown very well so far. Again, work in progress, the luxury of some little more added depth. I think we're going to play around with a lot of different line combinations throughout camp and especially into the exhibition games.
And lastly, just special teams. How valuable is that going to be, tomorrow in the red-white game? Just even going into exhibition, having a feel for what looks you want to see when you do get special teams play in exhibition, because there might be games where you don't get a ton, but so that you can really get a feel for who looks good with whom.
Yeah, obviously special teams will be a work in progress. And again, we've talked a little bit about the luxury of having a little more depth 5-on-5. We have a little more depth on special teams, and we'll have some decisions. We're probably a little deeper on guys that we would deem as special team power play type guys. Where last year, I don't know if we quite had that luxury. So be a lot of different looks going into special teams and then in the preseason also.
Especially some luxury with righties added to the power play.
Of course. Yep. Of course. Absolutely. Yep.
Thanks.
Ted?
Hey, Derek, you mentioned Fisher and Costin. Those two guys didn't generate the headlines that some of these other guys that signed, but they really do fill a need for you guys, don't they?
I just think they'll make us a little heavier. That's how they play, a little identity with being heavier, and they've shown that in the first 2 days of camp. So again, just some added depth. Today we worked on a lot of forecheck, just a lot of reloading, being on top. Our track looks today. I think those guys, a lot of that B game, if you will, and those guys seem to want that type of scenario situations. I really think they can complement anyone throughout our lineup.
Hey, Derek, how do you expect to split up the goaltending during the exhibition season? You have a lot of interesting guys, that probably deserve a look or two. How do you expect to divide all that time up?
Yeah, first priority to get Philly the right amount of looks and touches and feel, but we want to get a lot of guys some opportunities. Obviously 8 games is a lot of games in exhibition, and we do have a plan, but that usually goes out the window like anything else early on, even with our forward group. Again, first priority is giving guys, those NHL goalies, looks to be ready, and then giving guys opportunity for a little development and growth also.
And what makes you confident that Husso can come back to that level that he was, first half of the season, more so than first half of the season? What gives you confidence that he's going to be that type of player again?
we hope he just takes that natural growth. This is his first year as a starter last year. We still probably will plan on using him the similar amount of games. It just felt like last year we pushed him into some games just because where we were with what we weren't getting out of some of our depth in that position. I think we knew we probably overused him, maybe took him beyond his threshold. And this is the reason why. Get him a little more comfortable with playing the more games and more minutes. Again, Alex Westland, and we have a plan on what the season will look like. But usually, that's still a day-to-day type thing. But I foresee him getting a similar amount of games, that 55, 56, 58 range. Hopefully we can manage it a little bit better than we did last year on the volume of when and where.
Sounds good. Thanks for this, Derek.
Max?
Hey, Derek, just to follow up on that one with Philly. So it sounds like it's the sequencing, right? With managing his workload, back-to-backs, travel, stuff like that.
Absolutely. The threes and fours, how many games in the week, being smart about rest days, when rest days, we're going to treat him like a true number one. Very confident with our 2 and 3 this year. There's been a lot of talk about the added depth at both forward and D, but we tried to do the same with a goaltending situation. Last year we ran into some injuries with goaltending. Last year we ran into just some up and down play with some of our guys. So I just think adding some depth in that position will also help us.
And then I wanted to ask you, what kind of step do you think Jake Wallman is capable of taking this season?
That's a great question. Now there's expectations that probably changed a little bit for him, and that's never easy. Obviously it feels like him and Mo have a pretty good chemistry. We've seen a little of that even in camp for 2 days. So it's a little different coming onto the scene and then staying there, being a 1 and 2 night in and night out on a team that's trying to push to get to another level. So obviously his skill set and what he showed at times last year was very exciting for all of us. I'm really happy for him as an individual, also what he's done to help our group. So that's a good question. That's a wait and see type, but our expectations and what we expect and want out of him is a lot more certainly than when we were sitting here last year.
And I guess, what have you thought of him, how he showed up the first 2 days?
Great. Obviously, you saw him. It's probably why you're asking. He's looked extremely good in camp. Obviously, this day and age, I wouldn't say you take for granted. Guys have the correct summers, but what's out there as far as nutrition, technology, the individual skills coaches, most guys come in pretty good shape, and he's no different than anyone else.
Thank you.
George?
Hi, Coach. We talked to Alex and David about the physicality that was inherent throughout the lineup today. Everybody was bumping and grinding, and there was some aggression out there. Can you address that as it relates to the edge that the team wants to play with?
Well, I think just, some of the type of players we've added, I think will help us in that area, being a little harder to play against, a little heavier, a little more physical. But I also think it's a step from our leadership group. The most physical player in our camp yesterday was Mo Sider. And I think that's a sign of him growing, and this is what camp needs to look like. This is what reps need to be like. And I think that followed suit. Dylan was similar today. When you have your veteran leader type guys setting the example, I think that's a step in their maturity and growth in our leadership group.
Do you worry at all about that being a fine line between, the bump and grind and not wanting to get anybody injured?
No. Injuries are going to happen. That's all part of it. You can't tiptoe into anything. this league's way too good. This league is way too hard, and there's too many teams better than us. We have to elevate who we are and what we are in our approach.
As you said, today involved a lot of tracking drills. I was curious as to how you delegated to your assistant coaches today, because I noticed that they were the ones working a lot of the drills at the whiteboard.
Yeah, we split up all of our structure and systems. You know, obviously we share everything like most staffs in the league do, but you know, some guys are kind of leading in some of those different areas. One, I think it's healthy for the guys just have different voices. It's not always my voice in front of them. A lot of times in closed doors, it's usually my voice, which is certainly understandable. But I think that's just balance and growth in the staff, getting everyone in front of the guys.
Thank you.
Ansar?
Oh, yeah, Derek, when you get to assembling your lines for the start of the season, is it important to have a different element on each line, like a heavier body, net presence, for a different look and not just the same kind of players on each line?
Yeah, it can. You know, I think we'll keep, you know, working through that. Obviously, you know, we talk about, you reference guys like David Perron gives that to lines. He's the one guy usually in the line willing to go that hard area. Brass does that also. So yeah, of course you're trying to look for some balance in that, but again, just kind of maybe getting a feel through our depth. I don't really have a set situation like that yet. You know, we'll keep working through that all year. I didn't expect Fabry and Raymond to have the day they did today. But there was a little bit of pop and chemistry to what those guys are doing. So it's exactly why we'll continue to go through and rifle through some different looks.
And DeBrincat was on here talking about how he wasn't happy with his defensive game last year. I mean, is that good to hear from a guy who's for a goal scorer to be conscious of that two-way game?
Absolutely. And that's what winning looks like. Usually all those type of goal scorers and offensive guys go through that transition. They also know it's part of the overall team game. So it's good to hear. That's what we emphasize as a group. And as much as we'll lean on some individuals for some offense, you know, we'll expect a lot of the same of them, what we ask everyone with their team game.
Thanks.
Bob?
I don't think Bob heard you.
Derek, David Perron was talking about having a conversation with Alex Tanguay in his exit meeting about Alex telling him he wished he had dropped like maybe 5 pounds his last few years in the league. And David took it to heart, went home and actually did that. When a veteran who's accomplished all he has is willing to make those kind of sacrifices to come back and be a better player, how does that trickle down to the younger guys?
Well, I first probably want to start that with just the value of having that type of NHL experience on our staff. Alex Tanguay went through some very similar steps in his career that David Perron. It's relatable. I've always wanted to surround myself with some of the NHL playing experience because of those situations. But David he's driven, he's committed. There's no one that wants to win more than him. He's going to do everything asked of him and everything to continue to be productive, not only in this league, but for the team. And that's why he's probably overachieved to have the career he has. He was a huge part of us taking a step last year. He gets a little snarly at times. He's very intense. And we really needed that as a group. Sometimes it's our job to reel him in, which he understands, but he is a really, really important piece of our group. And just his approach, his will, his want. So it's a really good example and lesson for anyone in their career.
He was a guy last year who was one of your new bodies. You've got, 5 or 6 guys again this year that are new to this. What are kind of the key elements to getting that to mesh quickly? And, when you have a number of new players?
That's a great question, Bob, because we talk about it often. We're in that process right now. Not only did we add some depth to help the group on the ice, we added some depth to help what we're trying to accomplish off the ice. And there's going to be guys that are new to this team that we foresee helping us in our leadership group, just like last year, some of those new additions, David Prom being one of them, Ben Sherratt. But, these guys, some of these guys, Fisher, Petrie, DeBrincat, they've worn A's in this league. So we'll definitely be implementing them within our leadership group here.
Thank you.
Last question will go to Sam.
Derek, when it comes to younger players like Casper or Edvidson, who are sort of right on the verge of being ready to play in the NHL, do you find that players in that space tend to have a sort of similar last few hurdles to clear before they're ready for NHL minutes, or is it sort of always different for different players depending on their league?
Well thought out question, Sam, because it probably is different for different players. You want them pushing. In an ideal world, you don't want to rush those guys in. Obviously, a lot of Detroit's previous success when they were winning championships and Stanley Cups was their ability to have everyone develop at a little more methodical pace. And, we foresee the same for those type of players. We want them pushing for a spot on our NHL team. You need that push from the bottom and you need that push from the young guys. But at the same time, you don't want to rush them into it. So I think there's a balance here. And I do think it's different hurdles for each individual.
And then when it comes to Daniel Sprong, you kind of touched on yesterday the sense that he was one of the best scorers in the league by rate in a limited role with Seattle. Do you like the idea of kind of keeping him in that lower down the lineup role, or do you envision him potentially kind of climbing up in that lineup as the season goes?
Good question, but I think he could complement anyone throughout our lineup. But he seems comfortable in that type of role. He doesn't need a ton to score. He's a shooter. We want him shooting from everywhere. We don't want him trying to score from every situation. That's his strength. But he's had a really good camp also. Again, it's probably back to Helene's first question, trying to project and anticipate what lines are going to be like. We're going to have a ton of different looks throughout, but I really feel he could complement anybody in our top 12.
Thank you.